My name is Jente Althuis. I work at the United Nations Institute for Disarmament Affairs, particularly on the Managing Exits from Armed Conflict project, which is a project that's been running for a few years, first at UNU, United Nations University, and now at UNIDIR. And we look at exits from armed conflict. So we look at the trajectories of people entering and exiting armed groups with a particular focus on return and reintegration. So when people exit armed groups to different programs, how do they do? What kind of programming do they go through? What is the impact of this programming? What happens 1 year, 5 years, but also 10 years down the line to people who have gone through particularly UN programming, but also other agencies that we work with. I'm the data and methodology lead for our project. I'm obviously going to show you some dashboards, but it's not really a pitch for dashboards. It's more of a question of, is this really working? One of the things that we spend a lot of time on is figuring out how to improve access to data and to insights. And this is concerning the people that we work with, because we use a lot of perception data, so individuals themselves, but also agencies. How do we actually bring the right data, but maybe not even the data, the insights to people and have an impact? Some of our major funders and partners are obviously, I have to show them, but we are not a programming agency. We work with agencies that program. They fund us, they support us, and they often help us with data collection and analysis. So some of our main partners are IOM and UNDP, and some others in the room. And one of the main benefits of this is that we do not program, but all these partners do. And one individual in their lifetime might get in touch with multiple of these partners. You might be in an IOM program, in a UNICEF program, in a UNDP program. Different NGOs might engage with you. And as an individual, you go through all these trajectories. So we try to follow the person and not the program. We work also with communities of return. So we focus on individual level data. So this is maybe opposite to some of the things that I come from the world of like forecasting and this kind of research that I've been finding incredibly interesting. But now what we do is we interview individuals. So some of our surveys, for example, on people exiting Boko Haram in the northeast of Nigeria are 3,000 to 4,000 people in longitudinal studies. So we follow up with them every year. And we ask them themselves. So quite often we ask them, well, if you're going to move again, where are you going to go? And why? And quite often we perceive that there's all kinds of reasoning for this, and individuals just say, well, my friends live in Mosul, so that's where I'm going to go next, or I don't like my job, so I want to go somewhere else. So I think there's a real benefit to tracking individuals, but also a real challenge, which is how do you track a person over time for multiple years, making sure that they're willing to pick up the phone 1 year, 2 years, 10 years down the road. And to figure out like how are they really doing and to what impact do we actually have on their lives. This is the data that my team gets in Geneva. I know you all know this, but a lot of UN programs and agencies, this is still what comes in. And this is, in our case, particularly difficult data because it's individuals, it's messy, there's data missing, the cleaning takes a lot of time. So we spend a lot of time figuring out how can we help agencies get from this to something insightful. And we do traditional work. So we've been doing a lot of this, reporting, graphs, tables. And I would make a case for continuing to do that, because we often hear, people don't really read the full thing. Even now we do shorter briefs, 1 page, they'll read the bullet points. But agencies often want to quote our evidence, because if you make a case in your advocacy, if you're writing new programming, you do need to have some sort of reference to the actual evidence. So we continue to do this. But as you all know, and as we all found out, it isn't enough. There are some major challenges that we are facing. I had to quote this because this is the Secretary General's data strategy. It says data has to be a strategic asset. We have to be more data-driven, we have to go bigger, we have to do more integrated data. But we are still working with a lot of agencies that work with small-scale databases and Excel sheets. So what we want to do, and something that I find really interesting being here is, well, how do we make sure that that data doesn't get lost in this big movement towards the data-driven world? How do we keep those individuals engaged? How do we make sure that their perceptions and their opinions are still recorded well? So some of our major challenges are timelines. For us, we do longitudinal studies. Like, it takes a while to clean a data set. I know we use AI, we use all kind of mechanisms, but these surveys are adjusted to particular locations. They have to be translated by translators. The data has to be collected by enumerators on the ground in really difficult to reach areas. People often don't have phones, they don't have a good access, so that takes months. it's still very valuable. We then have to clean it. We have to receive it all back in Geneva, analyze it, do longitudinal modeling, review these models, and get that evidence back to a program and then pitch it and make sure that they listen to us. That's really hard, as you all know. And then timelines are difficult, especially following people over time. If you want to know how an individual really does, based on the support they received, you kind of need to follow them for a lifetime. Like funding cycles, if they even still exist, it's 1-2 years, which is a big funding cycle. 1 year is usually a programming cycle. So if we have evidence for someone 5 years down the road, by this time we've already lost half of the interest of the people that we're trying to talk to and trying to have an impact on. And then capacity. This is a room full of experts. Like, I know that I can show you guys half my graphs and you'll have a comment on it. And you also interpret it in a way where you criticize it. You think, okay, this is insightful, this is not. Have you thought about this? A lot of people that we work with are brilliant programmers. Like, these people have the best insights and they often correct me on my analysis. But they're not, data literacy isn't that high in some of the areas that we work in. And this is unfortunately also the case in some of our agencies, which is normal. That's not everyone's expertise. But especially in the communities, if you want to bring insights back to community, you can bring a dashboard to someone. Like, I can bring a dashboard to my little brother. He's also going to be like, well, what's interesting? What am I supposed to do with that? So I think this is something that we work on a lot. Like, what level of data literacy do you really work with? So what do people want from us? Ethical considerations, we do want to bring the data back. And awareness of data. So do people really know how much exists? And are people really able to capitalize on that? One of the things we do, I'll just quickly show it. So we have dashboards. One of the things we're working on is storytelling. So it works in some ways, it doesn't work in others. So our dashboards, they have a lot of storytelling and a lot of caveats, because we are researchers after all. But we restrict a lot of our data. So some of our data is accessible, but we make sure that we try to balance the ethical consideration of giving access to people who might not be an expert on our data, but also making sure that some of the disaggregations simply aren't possible, because we've researched those and we know that it's better not to do certain subsets. This is for data protection purposes, but also for the type of insights. We've had actually, with dashboards, we've had some of the benefits that we found are that if we get people who work in programming to look at dashboards, they might not necessarily do the analysis themselves, but quite often we find that when they start using it, so we've had, when you start subsetting by different regions or by types, the gender of the head of the household, and these are returnees in Iraq, we find that people figure out what they want to know that we haven't told them yet. So we've had a lot of agencies come back to us and say, oh, actually, that's really interesting. Can you now help us do the research? So there are certain benefits that we find in dashboards, which is that we've increased engagement with our data, and therefore we are better able to provide insights to people. We found this really hard with communities, right? This is not something we can not go to areas in Iraq with this, and that kind of engagement we are still working on. So I think there's serious limitations to this. So my challenges are pretty much the same as the reasons why we're doing this. Capacity is still a challenge. Like, how much can you really do it? It takes a while even to make a dashboard like this, go through it, make sure it's protected, make sure you've done all the right considerations. Getting community access is really hard. So this is something that I think dashboards are just not yet really doing, and something that we're working on. So we also do a lot of exploratory research, we do participatory research, and we try and figure out ways to get these insights and use them in different ways. And then the final one that I will mention is data integration. This is, again, this is very, in a way, very small-scale data. I find it a massive data set, 3,000 people, but it's small-scale data in the world that we're talking about. This is in areas in Iraq where we can't really use AI, we can't really use forecasting. These are people's individual lives and preferences. But the question is, how do we continue to take into account the relevance of this data in a world that moves so fast and is going so much bigger, so much quicker? How do we make sure that this individual can still tell us, well, you might think where I'm going, but this is where I want to live just because I want to live there, or because my friends live there. And this is why I don't want to be in agriculture anymore. Even though you might come with programming, I'm going to become something else. So we hope to continue this, and we hope to continue the conversation. We have dashboards in multiple regions. I showed a few examples of Iraq, but we also work in the northeast, northwest of Nigeria, Colombia. So you can explore those. And we really hope to continue the conversation to think about how can we continue to integrate individual perceptions and opinion data in a world that moves this fast. Thank you very much.